you speak, hey my man, let me say something. You make, and I won't say white people. In fact, I'll separate groups. You as a white person, when you speak, you make racists very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is an understatement. And this guy gets death threats where I'm reading his comments like, look, and you're like, hey, Dan. Yeah, no, yeah, my man. Yeah, okay. Properly.
Yeah, so I believe that the most threatening thing to a white
Hy is kind wat sê jy?
is not a person of color, a white person is produced.
Wat?
White people
Jou borskas. Wie se naam?
more than they listen to people of other races. And I think that is true of all different countries.
Nee, man.
Men listen to men usually in a way they don't listen to women.
Jy moet nou
Also,
sê daar so.
like instantly they don't listen to queer people. I think it's a power thing.
Lego se naam sê daar.
Somebody has an agenda of trying to
Legos?
in which black people are less or black people like this.
Sa gama sê daar.
For white people to all agree with him that the most threatening things that
Panahile mo za.
you're wrong. Because that white person can make other white people think, oh, maybe he is wrong. Maybe
Huh?
black people are not like that.
There was
I thought it's a direct project of convincing white people that black people are like this and the threat and whatever. And so, I mean, yeah, lots of death threats, lots of sometimes hilarious comments to be fair, because most people online
Huh?
are not funny or intelligent. They just say dumb shit. But I was once called
Wanneer hy kom?
the story, and that's
Ano si Hoopman?
as in like story. Yeah,
Nou.
son of the soil, son of the soil.
Wow.
Ek is
That's good.
ek is nou sê ek is 3 loop.
You are my favorite.
Ja.
Ito, ano?
That's good. Like,
Môre.
I think also that
Ek is môre vroeg oop.
all white people who
Maak so 'n deposit van jy sê jy kom in.
aren't doing a project to try and convince everyone that they're black.
Kaya, as ikaw ka, wala tayong programa. Kaya, kita ka good.
When I'm called a race traitor,
Ek sê jou dan,
which shows you what
wat kan ons doen?
being a race traitor
Wala ko tayong mag-work eh. Kasi ko naman mag-work.
Kyk, hy is kind wat praat, hy so jou deposit. Jou deposit gee jou tyd wanneer jy kan kom. So los die deposit, dan kan jy sê vir my, jy wil so laat as wel kom.
if you say anything that criticizes white people or heaven to get
Sien jy?
to get the Democratic
Hy moet worry van ek reeds, dan wil hy jou na dan. Jy moes my al so gelos in deze dag.
another team's attempt to
Jy het my so gelos al.
fundamentally
Jy sê jy kom dan los jy tyd vir jou oop, dan kom jy nooit nie.
how race should be most important in the way that we build our protect community. It is a sacrifice of food in order to protect the white people. Exactly. So I think that with some white South Africans,
Jy het nie tyd vir my gegee eers nie.
Kaya lang naman kayo kaya.
it's almost
Wat is dit?
or a counter argument. It's always a personal attack.
Ja. Nou jy sien, jy sal 12 uur gesit het, né? So, het is 1 o'clock gesit het. Maar jy moes nie die post gee nie. Toe kan ek jou woord vat om te sê jy gaan regtig kom nie. Toe kom hy nou. En toe kom vat. Dis die ding. Jou afspraak wat ek niks in die geld bygesit het nie. Jy het 'n windafspraak. Kyk jy. Is die dokter ek. Dokter vat 10 minutes te kyk op jou. Ek vat 2 ure, 3 ure jou. Wie sien nou? Sou nou. Ja, nee. Goed. So wat se letters? Ek het 'n uur.
I criticize
Yeah.
it's the same.
Kaya bakit ba
Racial.
kaya mo sa
If you're a race traitor,
Salon.
they send Cape Town, but they mean
Los die geld die man is man nou so sien.
earlier. Crime means black.
Los die geld die so. Los die helfte hier, dan kom jy môre aan die helfte. Nou sien jy nou. Hoe kan jy my vertrou in jou sit? Hoe kan ek jou my vertrou in jou sit? Hoe kom jy? Wie sê vir jou so?
whether like you need to roll with this.
Wanneer is hem hier gepraat om te vragen? Wie je pastoor?
Someone says you will show up, you will come. The man
Huh?
says, no, but that's about. Yeah, about. People like Joe Parker.
Is wel Goliath, as jou pastoor hy.
Who was having to promise
Sê jy vir jou pastoor ne?
that a black performer was worth.
Dit toe is so ne.
Not even like trust. He would have to bounce and
Ano ka man daw?
As dit toe luister, as dit toe se sonde is nie. En se feite ook 'n sonde.
remember the hand holding that we used to talk about.
Om jou hare feite is nie. Dit ook 'n sonde.
Ano siya? Ano siya?
Ja, nee, jy het feite. Even 'n bles ook, dis 'n bles ook 'n sonde. Want die Bybel sê, hy sê, jy mag nie dit bezet nie. Sê ook, jy mag ware nie kusnei nie. Op jou baard nie. Nog nie varkens eet nie. So jy kan nie 50% vat van die waarheid en die anders los vir wie los jy die anders dan? Maar is nie jou hare. So, die mense verstaan die konteks van hy skrif nie. Hulle vat nie daai wat vir hulle werk. Hulle nie saam stem nie. Nee. Es gaan nie oor geld nie. Het gaan nie oor geld nie. But this. Ek sê jou, as jy nie geld los nie. Zo woord beteken niks vir my nie. Ha? Gaan jy my kom aan? Nee, ek sê nie dis so. Ha? Nee, hoekom sê jy my kom sê? Is kind, kyk jy dan, as reg by jy sê, los die geld nie.
I always say to people, if you want to know what equality looks like, drive around any township, any black neighborhood, or anywhere where there's
As reg by jy sê, ek stem 100% saam.
coming together, going to one
Wat is dit? Die
Tell me
sente.
what size pants they wear, just as an average between all of them in townships and Korea.
Nou, nie meer geld.
Put them next to their counterpart. And from muscle mass,
As kos heb ik hele.
not being overweight,
Lekker mens met rijst.
that's what tells you what this system
Hey.
is being able to do and still survive and thrive under these conditions. When they know how much they walk versus how much they exercise. Yeah. Because if hard work was a real thing,
Ja, nooit ver. Dat is om die draai wat ons bly. Ons bly om die draai.
and even middle class black women now are working harder.
Yeah.
And they're still working and complaining about being underpaid and having more responsibilities and still finding themselves in these situations. When I go into staff defense classes and I'm in a group and I'm usually one.
Are you teaching or you?
No, when I'm attending.
Okay.
And I'm one or two of 20. And I'm like, hold on, you talk about me here. I don't see that threat the same way.
Sê, kompetisie. Ek het vir my voucher gee.
But you know why?
Toe wen lyk dit hom.
It comes back to the slacking of people. It's as simple as the slacking of people.
Wie? Wie? Pero.
I'll tell you what. So I remember years ago,
Wat te Pero?
I read a paper.
Cornelius.
What was commonly referred to as like a
Wat sê hom gewen?
You know, people go, all Asians look the same, right? And so someone went out and actually did a study, and they found that to people who have never grown up with any Asian people around them, all Asians do look the same. Because you are unable to differentiate the features, and you're unable to distinguish them. So it's an exposure problem. It's
speaking exposure thing. And then they tracked it between people and they found it's not one race of people is inherently unable or able to identify another group. It's all just about exposure. So, to come back to South Africa, black people were forcibly exposed in a section to white people, right? Because they had to work for them, they had to work in the mines, they had to work in the houses, they had to work, you know. But that's still a slither of them. Many black people live their life completely isolated from white people. And so we black people, funny enough, can't tell the difference. Like, half of my family cannot tell the difference between any of my white people. Like, if I brought you then now to my house, I promise you some of them will go, oh, nice to see you again.
They do.
I swear to God, yeah. I swear to God, they go, oh, nice to see you again. And I'll be like, oh, this is not him. I mean, I am a red.
Ik heb moest het hier voor je.
My friend. They'll just pick on that day, but you
Kijk eens. Je hebt niet verder. Super lijken. Nee, maar kom eens aan de mensen. Het is kunnen. Heel lief is ze. Nee, mensen aan de mensen slecht praten zijn. Ik moet hier dus, ik heb de vrouwen nice. Ik heb de vrouwen nice. Nee, jij moet veel rechter gaan zoeken. En ik heb een bekostig. Jij hebt een fire in je werk af, je hiet de pint op mijn werk. Ik heb niemand meer fire in nie. Exactly. Nee, hy is nie. Wat sê die Bijbel? Die Bijbel sê, your gift will make room for you. For great people. So my gave ne, het in my plek gemaakt in mense wallets. No joke. Hij is altijd cliënten wees. Voor mij, altijd cliënten wees. Yay, toepakkelen. Kijk je, pak ze trouwt nog. Is je nog getrouwd of wat? Is pak nog getrouwd? Ja, dan is het zo. Ik weet het, zo is het. Zie nog, iets zo zijn. Misschien is het verkeerd geweest. Misschien is het verkeerd. Recht, ja, pap. Recht, pap.
That one of the hardest aspects of racism, this is not the quote, but basically was saying is, I'll tell you when it starts. I'll tell you when the quote starts. Because I'm giving you the context first. He spent a lot of time at Robben Island. Pretty much all his time. And he made friends with most of his prison guards. And it got to the point where at Robben Island they knew the administration could not let Nelson Mandela or any of his cohorts associate with the prison guard for longer than like a few months. Because the prison guards started to see them as human beings and they started to treat them differently. Mandela would greet them, he'd ask them about their families, he would talk about himself as a human being, he wished them happy birthday. But it wasn't just him. People make it seem like Mandela was a saint guy. No, he was a human. That's what he was. He was just a human. And the other people who were in prison with him did the same thing, to the point of the prison guards went, he doesn't seem like the animal that you said he is.
Because bigotry requires dehumanization
And separation,
So no exposure allows for dehumanization.
no exposure. And so they did that, and that's what Mandela said. In that process, he learned that in a system of oppression, you have to free not only the prisoner, but also the guard. And that's the thing I think we really never get into in South Africa, and I've seen in the US as well, is that white people are also suffering from a system that was created by their ancestors. Because now I'm like, no, white people are terrified that they don't have to be. I know this is going to sound crazy. You're not being hijacked because you're white. You're being hijacked because you have the car that the people want. Now you must ask yourself why you have that car. I'm not saying blame yourself, but I'm just saying the chances of you being robbed or hijacked are directly proportional to how much things you have. You having the is directly proportional to how much you benefited from the system before you. But again, I'm not saying it's your fault.
The effect of the system is that you experience it as a race attack.
Yes.
You experience it as because of your skin color.
Because you're like, well, how else is this happening? It's not happening to anyone else. It's how you're seeing it. And then the people you hang out with, they're also white. They also got robbed. They also got someone kidnapped. They also, so you go, this happens to us more. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think why even at that young age, I was very impressed by 14 Years with Oscar. I was like, this
The
is
movie.
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah.
Plays into the
It
fact.
plays into the fantasy and the stereotype and they're angry and jumping walls and taking things because they are on the other side of the
And
place.
the miracle is that this animal brought the baby back. Like
Yes.
we never
Yes.
thought.
We were told
The miracle.
they do that?
Oh wow.
You see,
We didn't know the actress could do that.
Then cosplay as a racist.
That's really tragic.
Oh man, it's very sick.
I bring my kids here all the time. But yeah, you're right. Yes, so there were those situations where there were more movies about that and theories and the incentivization to create stereotypes is very huge in this country, in television. And I'm glad now we're
Everywhere.
mainstream television. But I'm saying in this country.
Everywhere.
In this country. Tina, we live it full fact. You know when I go to the US and watch your TV and I'm like, you guys are not watching TV. You're watching commercials the whole day. In Nigeria, you watch reality shows that support the stereotype of how black single women behave, about how taxi drivers behave, or taxi owners, and women in taxi owners, and people are fighting for a home in the township. All those rhetorics are live and happening as seasons get renewed. Season 10 of people fighting for a family home in the township. So what about
So you don't know, you know, it's funny to say that. I realize sometimes when you have these conversations with people, you just do this next time you're hanging out in a group of South Africans.
But you have 3 microphones and
If you want. You have to But like, if you sit around and have these conversations, you'll see. If you sit around and have these conversations, notice how differently people respond when you include yourself in being aggrieved, right?
Yes, yes.
Depending on the color of your skin. It's a really crazy thing.
Yeah.
So, I will see a white South African say, and it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's really funny. White South African will go, yeah, man, it's crime, I don't feel safe, and blah, blah. Another white South African will go, yeah, me too, it's terrible. And then a black South African will say, yeah, hey, you never know when they're coming. And then the white South Africans will look at them like, I mean, they look at them like, no, but we're like afraid of them. You know what I mean? They sometimes they look at a black person like, no, but you can like, it's your cousin. You can ask him not to take your car. I can't do anything. I can't do anything. Think about it, my Becky. It's just you. It's you and your cousin. You're safe. And
White people think that black people's houses are burglar bars to keep them in.
Yes, but you know what? It's and I think.
sorry about this, man.
No, but you know what I mean, Dan. It's like to your point. I think that's maybe one of the greatest disservices and injustices we did in our system. And by the way, I am somebody who's actually quite for what happened with the TRC. I know a lot of people have issues, and a lot of people go, it was wrong and this and this and this. I think it was innovative. I think it was the first time it's ever been done. I don't think it's ever been done anywhere else.
Not in that way.
Yeah, people always try and propose it.
Yeah.
But I think with any system or any idea, there's going to be the implementation and you realize, oh, we could improve on that. Like a constitution. You can always improve a constitution, but its starting point
Especially the part that says South Africa belongs to everyone who lives in it.
Am I that part?
No.
Okay. This is a conversation for another day. This is a conversation for another day. No, so what I mean is like you can always improve a constitution. You can always improve an idea. I think the TRC, first time out, my goodness. What an attempt to mend and to bridge the gaps in a nation where people were separated in a way that most nations have never experienced, right? But I think the one thing we have yet to do, and we have never done, is gone, hey, what is that exposure therapy that people need? And sort of an involuntary exposure therapy.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, Gail, and we were talking about how at our school they had a program where, because we were the first generation that was like, literally, you and I were the first generation, how old are you guys?
31.
31, yeah. So we were the first generation of kids that went to school with kids of a different race.
Yeah.
Literally, I sometimes think about how crazy that was when I go like, literally, the first year in my school, that there were black kids, Indian kids, colored kids, with white kids. That was the first time that had ever happened.
You guys were round one. You were the first child.
We were literally
all an experiment.
Yo, our
Could've gone
teachers
so wrong.
Our teachers had never seen a black child in front of them in a classroom before.
Our parents had to wear their Sunday best.
Yo,
The first drop off.
Drop off. Our parents didn't even know what a drop off was.
I mean, drop off.
No, but just think about that as a concept. I remember being shocked that when I went to school, kids were dropped off by their parents in a vehicle that they owned. Like one child got out of one car. Meanwhile, when the black kids got there, it was like a circus trick, where like one car that opened the door, and then like you're 15. And that's how we just traveled around. The back of every bucky, the back of every van was all of us. You know what I mean? But that exposure, like our school had this program where they went, we want every kid to go and stay at another kid's house who they're friends with. They weren't even like, they weren't like a stranger.
Yes.
But they said, hey, you guys are friends. But it was a deliberate program. Yo, it was amazing to see, talking about like exposure therapy. It was amazing to see how the black kids weren't particularly surprised by what they experienced because many of them had moms who were working for white people. So they had seen a glimpse of a white life.
Sense of it, yeah, for sure.
Let me tell you something. Every single white kid who went to go and live with a black family for a weekend, every single one of them went home and said the same thing. They said, Mom and Dad, do you know how black people live? And not in like a righteous way, just like a child,
Like a curious way.
like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. They went, yo, do you know how they live? Do you know how they come to school every day? Do you know that they have to take 3 buses to get with other people, strangers? Do you know that they don't have hot water in the morning at their house? You have to make a fire and then heat it up, and then they put a coal out, and then you have to do it again for each person. And actually, you know they don't have their own bathrooms. You know that their toilets outside. I go to school with this kid. I see myself as his direct like competition in that way.
Yeah.
But I'm going, how is he doing that when he woke up like that?
Does it in the dark?
How is he playing cricket with me or playing soccer with me? How does he have the energy when he ate like that?
And that goes back to the conversation you had with that guy in London about like starting completely equal from scratch, and about BEE laws and redress laws and justice and transformation laws. It's that exact conversation.
We're going to continue this conversation right after this short break.
Trevor, I wanted to suggest something though, because we've been talking about exposure, but there's something along with that, which is about getting South Africans to empathize with each other. So a positive example is the Springboks. If we all feel proud of the Springboks for like making South African, like it cool and like good to be South African, to be proud. But like ironically, one thing that quite often doesn't perfectly cut through all classes in a capitalist society, but does further than anything else to create empathy, is service delivery failure. So one of the best ways for South Africans to empathically get together is to go fuck ESCOM. And to go fuck the police. I have seen black and white South Africans.
ESCOM has brought us together.
Like it's brought, no, it has. It's a joke and it's the truth.
No, it's true, right?
It's true. A common agreement that the ANC has failed us in service delivery and other things that potholes on the road.
But can I tell you what I like about ESCOM more than the ANC? The ANC's politics. So what ends up happening is people then fall into that trap of making it a synonym for black. Yes. So they go, look at what the ANC has done to South Africa. Then you go like, then a black person will say, yeah, no, hey, I'm going to start my own political party. And they're like, no, but you might do the same thing. I mean, look at what the ANC has done. Then you're like, oh, okay, you're using it. What I like about ESCOM is, it's this nameless, faceless power utility. And what it has done, and this is something that is like, it's crazy to say, but ESCOM, the power provider in South Africa, has done something that has never happened in South Africa. It has made every South African experience the same thing regardless of the color of their skin. This is the first time in our history when a black person and a white person can sit together and go, we have the exact same problem. And to your point, we take for granted how, it's sad that it has to be a problem, but it's like, that is something that is so fundamentally powerful. It's for two people to go, hey man, you live in a township, I live in a suburb, but we both hate ESCOM. We get it.
And those are the small victories that as South Africans we tend to miss. I mean, the biggest victory for the TRC was not justice, which would have been great for the victims, the families of the victims, but overall for South Africans was to see these authoritarians who were backed by the state machinery to decimate black people, being told to sit down and shut the fuck up.
Damn.
That had never happened. It happened live with everyone watching. Desmond Tutu and whoever was in the country said, this is not fluff class. You're going to sit down, you're going to listen, and you're going to answer these questions. That was the overall resounding victory for all South Africans watching. Not the fact that they point us to the grave. So if their protest was to date fast and stay the course and not snitch on each other, well, that's for him in his grave to take too. But for us as South Africans, as we were all watching, and we saw this mild mannered man, Desmond Tutu, disabling them with kindness, but subtly telling them as well to sit down and shut the fuck up. For the first time ever, that was more powerful to South Africans than Mandela's fist in the air after wearing his wife's glasses, standing outside the library. You know, there was another thing. That's after pulling out you know, so that for us, as black people sitting there all together, it was the people being was the biggest victory.
Do you think it's not the same? But we're talking about things that provide unity and agreement. Do you think that the largely black South African led, but many different races in South Africa, commonly telling the refugees to Tutsis and Tutsi was similar? It was like, you guys fuck off. Yes, we don't want you here. You're completely wrong. We all agree that you benefited by going to America off of a lie that we all as a country reject.
Yes,
we all as a country, we all as a country say farm murders are not disproportional or more brutal than all other murders in South Africa. And there's no genocide.
If you pause, I think it's also, this is like something that's, guys, branding, man. There's one thing I've learned in observing American politics. Don't mess around with branding, especially right-wing, as you say. Right-wing branding is flawless. You know what I mean? Left-wing branding is often academic and like ephemeral at best. It's like, what does that mean?
You know the slogan, you know.
Just think about it for a second, guys. Farm murders. Guys, why is a murder labeled differently than any other murder?
White genocide.
But I'm like, guys, there are murders happening every single day in South Africa everywhere. They've never been given a special title.
Also, farm murders implies owners, when most of them are laborers or people who just happen to live on the farm. But the branding is Winknut suggested that it is the owners who are Winknut white.
And you're right, to add to that, robberies in farms are actually the problem. And the same farmers are not willing to disclose what is being robbed in those farms. As you all know, farms are not cash flash businesses. There's a tractor, there's a buggy, there's equipment, but what else is there inside your game farm that is worth more than your car? In a safe, this big. And it's also, what is it? Firearms.
I don't know the stats of ownership of firearms.
They are expensive.
Yeah, they are very expensive.
Firearms. The robbery is of the firearm. So if you have to think about someone who has a cache of firearms because they cater to guests that come from overseas, that can fly in their firearms, they shoot the kudus and the buffaloes. Now there's 500,000 rand worth of firearms and ammunition in a safe, and you've got laborers that don't live or that are registered to be in this country, right next to the border of the place where they come from. Guess what they're going to take in your house?
Something that's also, I mean...
What about the iPhone?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I mean, the nature of rural South Africa is that very, very often a farm is the only place with any kind of asset value for 100 square kilometers. And everybody else living in that area are impoverished people living in townships. And that's just a crime story about class. If you only have one really successful high-value asset business in a whole area where everyone else has no food to eat, what do you think is going to happen? It's like completely a class dynamic function happening in rural areas where the farms are the only places worth robbing because that's the only places of any kind of value.
Yeah, but I think sometimes when we say that, we actually lose part of an argument that it muddies it. I'll tell you why. So sometimes when we say these things, it makes people go, oh, so you're saying I'm only getting robbed because I have the money. Yeah, but I don't want to be robbed. I don't want to be killed. You get what I'm saying? No, and that's not what you're saying. I know this is going to sound crazier, but I think people need to understand. In South Africa, I will say the two statements. Number one, crime affects everyone. You know what I mean? Crime is not going to discriminate against your race, your what. But to your point, the people who are least affected by crime in South Africa are white men. The same ones who are crying the most.
And by the way,
you know what I mean?
And this is my particular.
But our crime does not discriminate. In fact, do you remember that story of who was that guy who came to South Africa on a honeymoon and trained at Bali? Do you remember the story?
Remember when you loved his jacket?
White guys in the Township.
So yes,
Remember when you loved his jacket?
I loved his jacket.
We loved his jacket. I love this jacket.
Thank you. Okay. So Sren Devani, story for those who don't know, Sren Devani is a story of I think it was an English national, and he came to South Africa for his honeymoon, and then he was on honeymoon with his new wife, and then she was tragically killed, and his story was that they got kidnapped by South Africans, the black South Africans kidnapped them, and then murdered her, and then he escaped somehow. They let him go, and that was it. That was the story. And I will never forget this till the day I die, because it's one of the darkest. It's like macabre because it's dark, but it's strangely funny, especially the further you get from it time-wise. So literally, South Africans were like, no, if they killed her, they're like, we'll kill you also.
Yeah, you're the biggest threat here as a man.
And he was like, no, they killed her, but then they're like, hey. And in the same way, I say that it's like the same thing I go like with this, white genocide. It's like, guys. Our crime comes for everyone. We have democratic crime. Have something.
Equal opportunity.
We are discriminating. Our crime. It's not black empowered, it's not black empowered. Have something, someone will try and take it from you. Now we're not saying we're for that, but we are saying that it's, you know what I mean? That's the reality of it. It's like we're living in a world. But I would love to go back to what you're saying about like the shared empathy. Is there actually a way that can happen?
What do you actually?
So you were saying like the Springboks, like the national rugby team. I will say this is just like a side opinion of mine. I personally blame Bafana. Yes, of course. Personally. If you look at South Africa's story, our worst moments, the democratic South Africa, our worst moments happened when Bafana doing its worst.
You're engaging too much of this.
But I'm saying Bafana.
Look at it.
But I'm saying Bafana.
Okay.
Our soccer team, our football team, guys, when it's at its worst, the country, that team has an outsized weight on the shoulders that I think they need to acknowledge.
And casualties.
Guys, you look at 2010. You know what part of the reason that 2010 was so good for us? Because we were in the World Cup. We didn't have to qualify for it. We were definitely going to be in it. 1998, that whole period, that honeymoon. What were we doing as the soccer team in the country? We were winning. Do you get what I'm saying? And I know this is a stretch, but I do think there's also an element in South Africa of when the rugby team wins, the whites have won. Blacks support the rugby team as well, but the apparatus of it is still seen as like, oh, the white institution did a thing right. When the cricket team wins, they go, yeah, see the white thing won. When Bafana loses, cry. You see those cries? Did you see how they were doing it? Yeah. It's a crime. Yeah. And I'm being serious. Yeah. And that's why I say like Bafana has an outsized influence on how the country sees itself. Many of my Brazilian friends have said the same thing. They go, when the Brazilian national team is doing well, Brazil is doing well. When we're doing terribly, you'll see more protests, more violence, more everything. And it might just be confirmation bias, but I do think there's something to how the collective experiences its reality based on like a few.
I think it's a consensus decision of how we're doing, expressed in a very, very small representative example that makes us feel proud.
Yes, that's true.
It's like our very best are the best of the world at a thing that the world cares about. And soccer is the most extreme version of that. Soccer is bigger than any religion, it's bigger than any nation, it's the most practiced cultural thing on the planet. And we we are a football nation first and foremost. Particularly amongst Black South Africans, we're a football nation first and foremost. And so if football, soccer, our best 11, the boys, the fun, our best stock are good, we feel good. But if our best offering is getting trashed by, we'll say, drawing with Lesotho, and no disrespect to Lesotho, but you know how South Africans feel about Lesotho. Heavy disrespect. You see how South Africans feel about I must say, we all saw how South Africa, even back South African children, Lesotho said they want to have. We all saw that. Remember what I'm saying is, it speaks to our pride in ourselves, our own self-value, even if we are not
you're right,
ourselves. The same way that, like, frankly, and this is both funny and not a joke, when Case Chiefs won the Nedbank Cup first victory in 10 years, many 9-year-old kids saw their dads happier than they had ever seen them in their whole life. That's true. There were 9-year-olds who had seen their dads joyful, truly, in a childlike manner for the first time in their whole lives.
Because of that one resounding victory.
Exactly.
And terrible
About
9-year-olds.
the kind
They
of
should have terrible 9-years should have done better.
yeah,
They should have made their parents happier.
But what I'm trying to say is,
right.
when Tyler does really well, it does have a psychic emotional effect on how we feel. When you do really well, it has a psychic. I do have a question for you. True, sorry. I thought this a bit earlier, but like with your success, it made so many of us feel proud. Not just people in the elite, but South Africans going, our very best are at the level of the very best. And so we were all very and remain deeply invested in you as a project, as a successful person. Charlie's Brown is the same, Tyler's the same. But what I've been thinking about with you recently is that you're almost like Captain South Africa to South Africans. You're like Captain America, because you are our guy who went to the world and showed America what it was like to look at America from outside of it, and you became the center of all of these massive, vital discussions about race and class and world identity and stuff. And so people expect you to be our Captain America, our shield, the one who defends us in the face of everything, almost has to do country duty, patriotic duty. People say, oh, Trevor must tell Trump that he's wrong about South Africa. Trevor must tell Elon Musk to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And I've always genuinely wanted to ask what that's like for you, because there's this weird thing that you need to be our greatest South African patriots because of how we as a country conceive of you. And I'm quite interested to know what that's like for you to go through.
So let me start by saying this. If I meet Trump one-on-one, guys, on site, hey guys, man, I'm telling him, telling him everything. Everything? You, hey, us, hey, where the? Wait, I tell you, Trump, we learned what this means from you. Man, Trump knows it. Trump knows it. He's halfway there. Those things are also... No. You know, I mean, you're very kind. I think, how do I think of it for me? So, the first and most important thing is, I do not believe most of the hype, okay? Because I have friends who humble me very regularly. So, no, but on the real, because I go, one of the most beautiful things I've learned throughout history is how the stories that we flatten to sort of like lift up individuals are oftentimes a much more complex tapestry than we think. So we say Nelson Mandela, but if we're honest, the list of names that is in and around it is so massive that you're like, oh, this guy was not really like the thing.
It didn't live and die by him.
No, and now I'm not saying Nelson Mandela, I'm not going to be like, oh, Nelson Mandela didn't do much. No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you forget that this was an apparatus. You forget that this was strategic. Martin Luther King Jr., another example. You know? Everyone from his wife, and this is often the case, by the way, with many of these great men. The wife is the person who's doing like most of, if not half of the work or more, and their name doesn't live on in the exact same way. You know, writing the speeches, building the strategy, fighting when they're in prison for 27 years, etc. So I think it's easy for people to think of Captain America. But I'm like, yo man, the Wakandans made that shield. You know what I mean? Who's that vibranium coming from? You know what I mean? Who built his, because that guy doesn't know how to make a costume. Who put him in that fridge? Who pumped that medicine into his veins? Who made him? The guy went to training. Who's training him? How did? So I think if you ever make the mistake of thinking that you as an individual are a superhero, you then forget every little piece of the puzzle that came together to make you who you are. So I just go, I love football. So for me, football is an analogy for life always, but I go, the thing I love about football, soccer, the sport, is you really learn very quickly. You are just in a team. Every position on the team, vital. Strikers get all the credit. All the credit. Yo man, strikers get all the credit. But let me tell you something. Good luck being a striker. Who gets all the credit when your defender lets you down, when your midfielder lets you down, when your goalkeeper lets you down. Just good luck on that. So for me, genuinely, and it helps me alleviate some of the pressure because I go, I don't take the acclaim the same way I don't take the pressure. Because I go, you can be grateful. I'm like, hey, thank you. I did my best, and I'm honored that anyone could think that. But at the same time, when someone's like, you must tell them, I do think it's funny. If someone's like, Trevor, you must tell Trump. And I'm like, my man, I would love to see the world you think I live in. I love the fact that you think I live next door to the White House, and then every morning I drive out and Trump is there, hey! I wish that was the case. You're not realizing that, so. But you know what I'm saying? Sorry, sorry. No, I wish that was the case. But yeah,
I just think it's an interesting thing that you go through in the way that South Africans perceive of you versus what.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I also
the truth of your career.
I also find it's also semi-generational.
Oh, interesting.
There are many South Africans who are a certain generation who still don't see me like that. They just see me as like a fun ambassador, like I'm a kid who made it.
Right.
There's people who are older than me who go like, well done, Bafanas, well done. Then there's people who are my age who are like, my man, nice to see you. I've seen younger ones, which is like, I'm like a mythical figure to them. I honestly think everyone has a role to play. And I don't mean this in like a kumbaya kind of way. I think everyone has a role to play. And we take for granted how much of an impact that role has. We all take it for granted. But that's something that my mom left with me. Like, man, and you and I have a similar story with like our moms. Man, my mom, I remember we'd like go somewhere random. A school that's got a church event on a weekend. So it's a school, but it's now church for the weekend. We'd walk in onto the ground. There'd be papers lying on the ground and like packets of chips that had been thrown away by the school kids. My mom would start picking them up. Guys, these things are infinite. As the wind blows, so do they. My mom would start picking them up. I'd stand there like, what are you doing? It's a Sunday, we're here for a trip. She'd be like, hey, wait, help me. But I'm like, Mom, first of all, it's not our school. It's a Sunday. Come on, man. She's like, hey. Then I'm like, yep. And then she would voice it. I'm not going to clean. Who's going to clean it? Because everyone else is walking past here saying it's not my problem. And I think we take for granted, and this is where it's like difficult in life, and I think it's for all things. It's you and your personal relationships, it's you and your community, you and your society, you as a nation. Two things can be true at the same time. There's a duality that exists that's difficult for people to deal with, because sometimes we're fighting against someone who's trying to flatten it, and so then we become flat ourselves. So someone goes, there's genocide of white people in South Africa. And then you go like, South Africa's great! Then you're like, now you can't address the things that are happening in South Africa because this person is trying to flatten it. You want to deal with the corruption in the government. But you know when you say, yes, there's corruption, they go, yes, the blacks. And you're like, no, you're using my acknowledgement to empower your racism. But I'm actually trying to work on a problem that needs to be solved. You know what I mean? And so I think if you think of it in those small interactions, like guys, white people take for granted, you know, you said it in the beginning, G, white people take for granted how much leeway and grace black people have given them in South Africa. And not like a you're lucky thing, but like as an Ubuntu thing, like real levels of it. Real, and some of it is, you know, internalized oppression maybe, but some of it is just like, yo man, we're still people. We're still people. And I think like a white person, the average white person takes for granted how their tone of voice, the way they interact with a black person, the way they, and I've seen the difference. I've seen some white people who think the person who cleans their house is lucky to have that job. And then I've seen white people who go, yo man, this person has been cleaning my family's home for maybe 2 generations even. This person has watched and raised my children. This person has cooked food for my entire family for decades. How is it that they still don't have a driver's license? How is it that this person who has watched us, they've moved houses with us,
Relocated their lives.
but how is it that this person hasn't moved houses? So what has happened in our world, because now if that person was a blood relative, I don't think you would be as proud of yourself. I don't think you'd be able to look at yourself going like, oh yeah, no, my aunt has lived with us for 40 years. She raised me and my brothers and sisters.
Because they can
But every day when she goes home, she walks for 10, 20 minutes, then catches a transport, then to another transport that takes her 3.5 hours to get home. That's my aunt.
Yeah.
No one would be proud of that.
Wouldn't tolerate it either, wouldn't allow it.
Travis did
So
it.
sorry.
No.
Even the safety conversation with domestic workers versus the other people that live in the house like family members.
Oh, man.
They would know how to protect themselves, where the firearm is, where the panic button is, who to call. But the person who stays there in the house alone,
Yes.
apparently according to people, they're exempt to be violated. But here's my thing.
They are, to your point, actually to expand on that. And you do say this, Dan, and I think it's important to hit on it.
Yeah.
There are so times when these